Hello there, and welcome to AR Calm Science. Tonight, we're settling into something quiet and familiar, a sound that has followed humans through every age and every home. Rain. Not the storm that rattles windows or the downpour that floods streets, but the steady, patient rain that falls without hurry, the kind that seems to lower its voice the longer it goes on. We are going to spend this evening asking a simple question that turns out to have a surprisingly deep answer. Why does rain feel relaxing? Why does something so ordinary, water falling from clouds, reach so easily into the tense places inside us and loosen them?
There's a reason almost everyone can picture the exact feeling of lying in bed while rain taps against the glass. There is a reason cafes play rain sounds to help people focus, and apps sell recordings of storms to help people sleep. Rain is one of the few sounds that seems to belong to all of us at once, understood the same way in nearly every culture, every climate, every era. Tonight, we will look at the physics of that sound, the biology of your nervous system, the ancient instincts still humming beneath your ribs, and the quiet psychological permissions that rain seems to grant almost the moment it begins. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is settle in. Let your shoulders soften, let your breathing slow, and allow your mind to rest into stillness as we explore the hidden science of rain and why it feels like being held. Let's begin. Rain is one of the only natural sounds built almost entirely from randomness, with no threat inside it. Most sounds that catch your attention do so because they are unpredictable in a way that might matter. A branch snapping, a door closing somewhere in the house, a voice raised half a room away. Your brain is wired to notice these, because across the long stretch of human history, sudden and irregular sounds sometimes meant danger. Rain is unpredictable too, technically speaking. No two raindrops fall in exactly the same rhythm. Yet none of that irregularity ever resolves into anything resembling an event. It is randomness with nothing riding on it. Your threat detection system listens, checks, and finds nothing worth escalating.
Over and over, thousands of times a minute. Eventually, it simply stops checking as hard. That release, the quiet stand down of a system built to stay alert, is one of the earliest reasons rain begins to feel like permission to soften. Rain covers up the small, sharp sounds that usually keep part of your brain on watch. Silence is not actually restful for most people, not true silence. In a perfectly silent room, the mind often becomes hyper-aware of tiny sounds, a creak, a hum, a distant engine, each one drawing a sliver of attention because there is nothing else to listen to. Rain solves this by filling the space. It creates a soft, continuous layer of sound that sits underneath everything else and blurs the sharp edges off of smaller noises. A car passing outside becomes a murmur instead of an intrusion. A floorboard settling becomes indistinguishable from the texture of the rain itself. Your nervous system no longer has to sort through the quiet for meaning, because there is no true quiet left to interrogate. In this way, rain does not just add a pleasant sound, it removes a job your brain would otherwise be doing without you noticing.
your body still remembers when rain meant it was safe to stop moving. For most of human history, weather decided what you could and could not do. Clear skies meant hunting, gathering, building, traveling, the long list of tasks tied to survival. Rain meant something different. It meant the ground was too soft to work. The paths were too slick to travel. The outdoor labor of the day was paused, whether you wanted it paused or not. Shelter became the only sensible choice. And shelter, for early humans, usually meant a fire, close company, and stillness. This pattern repeated across countless generations. Rain arrives, movement stops. Safety consolidates indoors. That association did not need to be taught consciously. It settled into instinct, the way so many old survival patterns do, quietly and without a name.
When rain begins today, some very old part of you may still recognize this as a signal that effort can be set down for a while. The frequency range of rain sits almost perfectly inside the band your brain finds easiest to ignore without ignoring. Sound is made of frequencies, and different frequencies demand different amounts of attention from your auditory system. High-pitched sudden sounds, a scream, a shattering glass, a phone alert, are almost impossible to tune out because they occupy frequency ranges your brain evolved to prioritize. Rain, by contrast, produces a broad wash of mid and lower frequencies with very few.
A sharp peaks. It is often compared to what audio engineers call pink noise, sound where the energy is distributed in a way that feels fuller at the low end and softer at the high end, closer to how a heartbeat or ocean surf sounds than how an alarm sounds. Your ear does not have to strain to process it, and your brain does not have to elevate it to importance. It exists at a frequency your whole system seems built to accept rather than resist. Rain does not have a startle point the way most sounds do. Nearly every sound that unsettles us has an attack, a sudden sharp beginning that spikes in volume almost instantly. A slammed door, a shout, a bang. These sudden onsets are what trigger your startle reflex, that full-body jolt that happens before you've even consciously registered what you heard. Rain almost never behaves this way. Even in a sudden downpour, the increase in volume tends to happen gradually, over several seconds rather than a fraction of one. There is no true attack, no split-second spike for your nervous system to brace against. Because your startle reflex has almost nothing to respond to, it stays quiet. And a nervous system that isn't repeatedly bracing has far more room to relax into whatever else is happening around it. Petrichor, the smell that rises after rain, seems to trigger memory and calm in a way scientists still find remarkable. That particular scent, earthy, mineral, faintly sweet, comes largely from a compound called geosmin, produced by soil bacteria and released into the air when raindrops strike dry ground. Human noses are extraordinarily sensitive to geosmin. Some research suggests we can detect it at concentrations lower than sharks can detect blood in water. That sensitivity likely evolved because the smell once signaled something valuable: water arriving after dryness, conditions turning favorable again. Today, most of us have no practical need to detect approaching rain by smell, yet the sensitivity remains, and along with it, an emotional charge that feels disproportionate to a simple chemical compound. Petrichor tends to arrive paired with childhood memory, with the smell of familiar places, with a sense that something good has just begun.
That emotional weight, inherited rather than learned,
adds another quiet layer to why rain feels less like weather and more like comfort. Rain has been paired with rest so many times across your life that your body now responds before you consciously decide to. Conditioning does not require intention. If rain has coincided again and again with staying indoors, wrapping in blankets, delaying plans, or simply being still, your nervous system begins to treat rain itself as a cue for those states, the way a bell can come to mean food long before an animal understands why. Most people cannot point to the exact moment this pairing formed: a rainy afternoon as a child, a rested Sunday, a nap taken while rain fell outside. But the body remembers patterns, even when the mind forgets the specific days that built them.
By adulthood, the sound alone may be enough to nudge your system toward rest, an association so deeply practiced that it now arrives instantly, almost like a reflex borrowed from years of repetition. The repeating rhythm of rain resembles some of the earliest rhythms your body ever knew. Long before language, before conscious memory, every human spent months inside a rhythm of fluid movement, muffled sound, and a heartbeat close enough to feel through the body rather than hear through the air. Rain, in its steady patter, echoes some of those qualities, a repetitive, softened, fluid-adjacent sound with no sharp edges and no clear beginning or end. Some researchers who study infant soothing techniques have noted that many effective calming sounds, white noise machines, gentle static, rhythmic padding, share these same qualities with rain almost by coincidence, or perhaps not by coincidence at all. If a sound resembles the earliest environment your nervous system ever adapted to, it may retain some quiet power to return you to that same settled state, even decades later. Rain gives your mind permission to stop making decisions for a while. A surprising amount of daily stress comes not from any single hard choice, but from the accumulation of small ones. What to do next? Where to go? What needs attention right now? Rain interrupts that chain simply by narrowing your options. Outdoor plans become impractical. Errands can wait. The pressure to be productive in a dozen small directions quietly loosens because the environment itself has removed several of the choices you would normally have to weigh. This is part of why rainy days so often feel like an exhale, not because anything difficult has been resolved, but because the sheer number of decisions competing for your attention has temporarily shrunk. Fewer choices demanding evaluation leaves more room for stillness, and stillness, once permitted, tends to spread. Listening to rain requires almost no mental effort, and that absence of effort is itself deeply restorative. Attention restoration theory, a concept developed by environmental psychologists, proposes that certain kinds of attention are exhausting, the deliberate, effortful kind used to focus on a task or filter out distraction, while other kinds are restorative, the soft, involuntary kind that gets pulled gently towards something interesting without strain. Rain sits almost perfectly in the second category. It draws attention without demanding it. You can notice the sound, drift away from it, notice it again, all without any sense of losing your place or failing to concentrate. Few stimuli offer this so completely. A conversation requires tracking. A scream requires visual processing. Rain simply exists, asking nothing. And in asking nothing, it gives your effortful attention a chance to recover from
everything else it has been doing all day.
The gray light that usually comes with rain nudges your body toward a state associated with rest. Bright, direct light suppresses melatonin, the hormone tied to sleepiness, and signals to your body that it is time to be alert and active. Overcast, diffused light does the opposite to some degree. It produces less of that suppression, and your internal rhythms respond accordingly, tilting slightly toward drowsiness even in the middle of the day. This is part of why a rainy afternoon can feel like early evening, regardless of the actual hour. Your eyes are reading environmental cues your conscious mind
isn't tracking, and those cues are quietly recalibrating your sense of what kind of day this is meant to be. A slower one, a dimmer one where rest fits more naturally into the shape of the hours. Changes in air pressure before rain may influence mood before the rain even begins. Storms are typically preceded by a drop in barometric pressure, and some researchers believe these pressure shifts can subtly affect the body, influencing blood flow, joint sensation, and even certain neurotransmitter levels, though the science here is still developing and not universally agreed upon. What is clearer is that many people report a shift in mood or energy in the hours before rain arrives. A settling, a heaviness, sometimes
described as a kind of anticipatory calm. Whether this comes primarily from pressure changes, from subconscious recognition of darkening skies, or from a mixture of both, the effect is real enough that many people can sense rain coming before a single drop falls, their body responding to the atmosphere shifting around them in ways too subtle to name, but too consistent to dismiss. Rain sound follows a pattern mathematicians call pink noise, and human brains seem unusually drawn to that particular pattern. Pink noise describes sound where the power decreases as frequency increases in a specific natural ratio, different from the flat, hissing quality of pure white noise. Waterfalls, wind through leaves, and steady rainfall all tend to fall into this category. Multiple studies on sleep and relaxation have found that pink noise can help stabilize brain activity during rest, smoothing out the irregular spikes that often accompany a restless mind. There is something almost poetic in this, that the same statistical pattern found in ocean waves and rustling forests also happens to describe rainfall, and that human brains, shaped by millions of years surrounded by exactly these sounds, still respond to that particular signature of nature with something like relief. Human brains appear to find fractal patterns soothing, and rain is fractal in both sound and structure. A fractal is a pattern that repeats itself at different scales, similar shapes appearing whether you zoom in or out. Clouds are fractal, coastlines are fractal, and the acoustic texture of rain, made of countless individual droplet impacts layered into one continuous wash of sound, echoes this same self-similar quality, texture within texture, at every scale you listen. Some research into environmental psychology has found that fractal patterns, visual or auditory, correlate with measurable reductions in stress markers, possibly because these patterns are so common throughout the natural world that recognizing them signals, on some deep, unconscious level, that you are somewhere familiar and unthreatening. Rain, without ever needing to be understood mathematically, communicates this familiarity instantly, a texture your senses have encountered in one form or another since before you had language for it. Rain implies shelter even before you consciously think about it.
The sound of rain almost always arrives with an unspoken assumption that you are protected from it, under a roof, behind glass, dry while the world outside is not. This unspoken safety is built into the very way we experience the sound.
Rain heard from inside carries a completely different emotional charge than rain experienced while caught in it without cover. The comfort is not simply about the water itself. It is about the implied boundary between you and the elements. A boundary that quietly reassures your nervous system that whatever the weather is doing, it is not something you currently need to manage. That reassurance operates almost instantly and mostly beneath awareness, coloring the entire experience before any conscious thought about safety ever forms.
Ancient humans may have treated rainy periods as some of the only guaranteed rest their bodies ever received. In many early societies, work followed the rhythm of the sky far more strictly than it does now. Sun meant labor. Storms meant enforced stillness. Because survival depended so heavily on weather cooperation, rain may have represented one of the only culturally sanctioned reasons to simply stop, without guilt, without falling behind, because everyone else was stopping too. This kind of collectively permitted rest is rare in most modern lives, where stopping often requires personal justification. Rain may still carry a faint echo of that older permission, a sense that pausing during rain is not laziness, but simply following an old and reasonable rhythm, one where humans have always yielded to weather rather than fought against it.
The steady sound of rain appears to nudge brainwave activity towards slower, calmer patterns. Human brain states shift constantly between different wave frequencies, faster patterns associated with focus and alertness, slower patterns associated with relaxation and drowsiness. Steady, repetitive, low-intensity sound has been shown in some studies to encourage a shift toward these slower rhythms, sometimes called alpha or theta activity, the same general states associated with meditation, daydreaming, and the early stages of sleep. Rain, with its unbroken continuity and lack of sudden change, provides exactly the kind of steady auditory backdrop that seems to support this shift. It does not force the brain into a different state, but it removes many of the small interruptions that would otherwise keep the brain cycling through faster,
more alert patterns, leaving a clearer path towards stillness. Rain has become culturally coded as an acceptable reason to cancel plans, and that cultural permission relieves a surprising amount of hidden pressure. In many social contexts, choosing to stay in or skip an obligation requires justification, and weather has long served as one of the few universally accepted excuses. Rain, more than almost any other condition, carries this social shorthand, an unspoken agreement that plans can shift, that staying home needs no further explanation. This cultural pattern removes a layer of guilt that might otherwise accompany rest. You are not choosing laziness. You are responding reasonably to conditions everyone recognizes as valid. That small social permission, invisible as it usually is, contributes meaningfully to how easily people allow themselves to relax once rain begins.
Because the excuse has already been written for them by generations of shared understanding. The layered texture of rain hitting different surfaces creates something closer to natural music than most people realize. Rain striking a metal roof sounds different from rain hitting leaves, which sounds different again from rain against glass or pavement. When these surfaces exist together, as they often do around a home, the result is a layered composition of overlapping textures, rhythms nested within rhythms, some sharper, some duller, blending into a single complex wash. This complexity is part of what makes rain endlessly listenable rather than monotonous. Unlike a simple repeating tone which the brain quickly tunes out or grows tired of, rain offers enough subtle variation to remain engaging without ever crossing into demanding attention. It occupies a rare middle ground, interesting enough to hold gentle awareness, simple enough to never require effort. Rain shares several qualities with sounds specifically designed to trigger the calming, tingling sensation associated with ASMR. Soft, consistent, low-volume sound with minimal sharp transients is a hallmark of many ASMR triggers. Whispering, gentle tapping, the crinkle of paper. Rain naturally contains these same properties: consistency, softness, and absence of harsh peaks, without ever being manufactured for that purpose. For people sensitive to ASMR-like responses, rain can trigger a similar physical relaxation, a loosening in the shoulders, a slowing in the chest, sometimes even
The light, tingling sensation some describe along the scalp or spine. Even for those without a strong ASMR response, the same underlying qualities, gentleness, consistency, predictability, still contribute to the broader sense of ease rain tends to produce, simply at a subtler intensity. Listening to rain tends to slow your breathing without any deliberate effort on your part. Breathing rate is closely tied to nervous system state, faster and shallower during stress, slower and deeper during rest. Steady ambient sound, rain among the most common examples, has been shown to gently encourage this slower breathing pattern, likely because the absence of sudden or threatening stimuli reduces the sympathetic nervous system's need to keep the body ready for quick reaction. As breathing slows, heart rate often follows, and the entire physiological cascade associated with relaxation begins to unfold, not because you consciously chose to breathe differently, but because the environment itself removed the pressures that were keeping your breath shallow in the first place.
The muted colors of a rainy day reduce the amount of visual information your brain has to process at any given moment. Bright, saturated environments carry more visual complexity, more contrast, more detail competing for attention. Rain tends to soften all of this, muting colors, blurring edges, replacing sharp shadows with even, diffused light. This reduction in visual complexity lightens the load on your visual processing system, freeing up mental resources that would otherwise be spent parsing a busier, more contrasted scene. Even without realizing it, your eyes are working less hard on a rainy day, and that subtle reduction in visual effort contributes to an overall sense of ease that extends well beyond what you consciously notice about the way things look.
Rain reduces the pressure to be doing something impressive with your time. In a culture that often measures worth by productivity, days without clear obligations can sometimes carry quiet guilt, a nagging sense that free time should be filled with accomplishment. Rain interrupts this pressure by making outdoor activity, socializing, or ambitious plans genuinely impractical rather than simply undesired. This shifts rest from a choice that might need defending into a circumstance that requires none. The permission to do nothing feels earned rather than indulgent, and that shift in framing alone can measurably reduce the low background anxiety that so often accompanies unstructured time, allowing rest to be experienced fully rather than half enjoyed under a shadow of should be doing more.